If you haven't seen part 1 yet, go watch that first. If you have, let's get back into it.
Times are changing and I'm getting old.
Behold, the episode where I finally make the transition to Vegas Pro and go hog wild on editing, and even add some jaunty background music from Ren and Stimpy to juxtapose the mood. The editing starts tame, but I got really playful as this video went on, testing the potential of my new toy. There's all sorts of needless panning and cropping and gags like I'm trying to look more professional or appeal to the TikTok crowd. Talk about ahead of its time. That even boils down to the runtime of 5.5 minutes, which is noticeably shorter than the previous 2 episodes. I don't actually have a quota for video length on any project, generally speaking. A video is as long or short as it needs to be, so I obviously didn't have a whole lot to say about this game. What is there to say? It's a sword fighting game with a variety of weapons to use. It's its own reward as far as anyone's concerned. Well, it is once you realize you have to click the button to join the queue to play. Once I'm actually in the game, my voice quality takes a noticeable dip.
So I'm entering the place, and the first thing I notice is I've got a force field around me.
The pre-visit voiceover was recorded before I upgraded to a new mid-tier gaming rig, which I used to visit the game and record footage. With a, at the time, top-of-the-line CPU, or so I'm told, 8GB of RAM and a far superior but still mediocre Radeon HD 5570, I was actually able to play Roblox and other games at an adequate frame rate. Mostly. The GPU was still a bottleneck, but better than what I had. I wouldn't upgrade to an NVIDIA GTX 460 until a year or 2 later, and then to a GTX 960 when the 460 gave out several years later. I also upgraded from a cheap headset I got at Walmart to a decent gaming headset, but the upgrade came with background noise whenever I tried to record my voice. Or more accurately, it was always there, but I was actually starting to notice it and it was bothering me. My initial fix was to use Windows' built-in noise suppression, which was overly aggressive and tanked the audio quality of my voice. I reluctantly went along with it because I decided it was better than dealing with the constant hissing of understated white noise. It wasn't until much later that I found a better solution. Another rookie mistake I noticed while watching this video was the fact that I left resampling on. I didn't know much about video editing at the time, but those ghostly images kind of irked me if I paused at the wrong time. It's a result of Vegas blending extra frames from the footage to cheat a motion blur. It looks okay at 30 frames per second, and it's what Ross Scott does to emulate the feel of 60 FPS without making you motion sick. So it's not a huge problem in this particular video. More than anything, it was a novelty for me to even be able to upload in 1280 by 720 resolution in the first place, which, believe it or not, was considered HD at the time. Resampling doesn't look especially good at 60 frames per second though, and some of my videos suffered for it, particularly the 2020 revival of Nimrod House 2. You know, if I was gonna take advantage of the higher resolution, maybe I could have at least played in full screen, or at least cropped out the thick black border. Fucking amateur hour. I love that this game inadvertently served as a blueprint for pay to win on Roblox. Remember, there was no DevX back then. You couldn't trade in your Robux for cash. Everyone was competing in an attention economy, not a financial one. The main currency on Roblox was clout. The currency exchange paved the way for non-Builders Club players to buy Robux-only items by trading in their tickets for Robux, since there was no other way to earn them without membership or the exceedingly rare contest prize money. Your only reliable way to get Robux without paying was to get people to visit your games and stay in your games to perpetuate the cycle of new players. Wait, isn't that how pyramid schemes work? The point is, my concern about exorbitant prices for better gear seems almost petty with the benefit of hindsight. Still, the notion of buying better equipment in PvP will almost always amount to pay to win, even if you're paying with time or imaginary money. Most games that employ that kind of thing don't have the nuance of Counter-Strike, whose core gameplay is balanced around the in-game economy. I won't go into details on that front because the War Owl already did it, he did a good job of it, and that's not what this video's about. In this game, you're almost always hopelessly outmatched until you get better gear. All this is under the assumption, of course, that you figure out that you need to click the button to join the queue to get matched up against an opponent. The GUI is kinda small and not immediately obvious, so it's fairly easy to miss. I think the gamer knew that and put it right under the chat, since that's one of the most common places your eye will dart towards when playing Roblox. I know why he did it though, so that you can personally confirm that you're ready to play instead of getting thrust into a match when you're decidedly unready, like if you're AFK or browsing the shop. You'd think the system could just temporarily remove you from the bracket if you're shopping, but not everyone making Roblox games had that kind of foresight or scripting know-how. And once I'm in, you get to witness my awesome sword fighting skills that I do not have. I remember being decent, but not spectacular. Sword fighting in Roblox was a game of wiggling your character around to get as many hits to register as possible. It was cheesy and unsophisticated as all hell, but there was a sort of art form to it. Well, as artsy as exploiting the physics engine by wiggling around your character as you mash ADAD can get. God, I'm getting PTSD flashbacks of lean spam and crouch spam in Rainbow Six Siege. I do not miss that game. Though, knowing the sword fighting meta only does you so much when the other guy's weapon is just straight up better than yours and does more damage than yours. That's real fair. To his credit, I've heard that the gamer took my review to heart and tried his hand at balancing all the weapons. I can't comment on whether he did a good job because I never went back, but hey, points for trying. That was definitely the right attitude to have toward my review, hostile as that review was. Gotta stay in character, don't you know? The Scotsman's Skull Cutter was not exactly the pinnacle of balance in Team Fortress 2, but at least I got the point across. I think this is the first and only time a game creator was ever proactive about improving their game after I reviewed it. Most just brushed it off or didn't even pay it any mind. I'm not sure how many people whose games I reviewed actually saw the videos I made about them. That alone makes this episode a bit of a standout. I can only hope that there was no bad blood between us. That was never the intention. Still, that was big of him to attempt to better his place. I know I say the reviews are satire, but the satire often boiled down to accentuating the negative and largely ignoring the positive. That's not exactly encouraging to endure when you're on the receiving end. What did Anton Ego say? Critics thrive on negativity because it's fun to write and read. Swordfight Tournament wasn't perfect, but it did what it set out to do, even if its execution was inherently flawed. And let's be honest, anyone who's played CSGO usually can't help but indulge in the guilty pleasure of being able to afford an auto sniper.
Are you gonna hold me accountable?
Now here's a review like no other on the list, and for good reason. I never finished it. I started on it, doing the usual routine of pre-visit voiceover and getting a picture of the game's comments section to supplement the commentary, but when I was finally ready to actually visit the place, it was gone. Sure, there were a bunch of copies everywhere, but I prefer going to the source if I can help it. Island Resort was full of stolen assets, but they were stolen assets chosen and implemented by the creator of the place, not a copied place in and of itself. It's kind of a shame because I had a funny little gag with that intro. Maybe the game would have gotten a verdict of just run if I was clever enough. Then again, if I was that adamant about not reviewing stolen places, it's probably for the best that the review never happened. Heroes was allegedly not the original creator. It was apparently stolen from another player, SS1122. Now, since this is from a comment section on the internet, we are required by internet law to assume that this is indisputable fact. By this infallible logic, we can only assume that fate itself stepped in and shot down any attempt at my reviewing the place by banning heroes. Again. For good this time. Or at least, long enough for me to forget about doing the review or forget where I left the files. I knew they were around, I just didn't know where. Turns out, they were hiding in plain sight. A folder on my desktop labeled RRR stuff. The irony is I ignored it because the vague folder name made it seem like it was redundant or dated. Talk about a self-fulfilling prophecy. My short attention span killed the review before it could even make it to the recording or editing stage. What the game was like, and whether it was any good, will remain a mystery to me.
And it doesn't always mean the place is bad. I mean, remember Tip Over? That was pretty much just geometric shapes, and that was pretty fun.
Alas, I have no recollection of Tip Over, so I don't know what I was on about there. I recorded the audio on March 17th, 2011, about 5 weeks after publishing the Swordfight Tournament review. 2 years and 2 weeks later, I found the unused files and uploaded them to YouTube for archival purposes. Chronologically, this video probably would have been published late March 2011, right in between Swordfight Tournament and Survive the Disasters. Speaking of,
Isn't anybody gonna hold me accountable?
this one was a lot of fun to do. I went ham on voice acting and was still picking bits of scenery out from in between my teeth after I finished, which is weird because there was no scenery to chew. Right off the bat, I was playing up an overly dramatic intro, panning over to an early 2010s meme. Of course. Jimbo McBee's Nope.avi lives on in our hearts and the back burner of our minds. Full disclosure, I added that Nope ad. It's covering up an actual ad, as had become tradition on the show. The dramatic music is Don't Do It by Mike Morosky from Portal 2. Yeah, I was still riding the hype wave of Portal 2, given the timing of the video's release. Portal 2 had come out 3 months ago, and I'd played through it and beaten it that same day in 2 sittings. Good times. And what a way to start the most viewed video in the series at time of writing. You might even say I had a score to settle because the furry fox had taken the piss maybe a year or two ago by saying I make Django 136's flame jacket look bad. I never thought much of it, and still don't, but it's funny to think of this video as the reviewer persona trying to get petty vengeance. It wasn't. I would have reviewed the place if he said I made it look like a Giorgio Armani. Whenever I bring up this place in casual conversation, I often point to my own Survive the Disasters game, Crossroads Survival, which I made as part of the Roblox God of War Online initiative. Doombringer is attacking Crossroads and you have to survive. Obviously. You would spawn in and the game would randomly select from a pool of 6 disasters. Structure collapse, fire, killbots, zombies, meteor shower, and bombs. If you survive all 10 waves or you're the last one standing, you win. I did my best to make sure there were no safe spots to camp in because that'd be dumb and boring. That was back in 2010, before I ever set foot in Survive the 90 Disasters, so I was already skeptical about the concept of having 90 unique disasters when my own project only had 6. 6 isn't a lot, but each one was distinct. There was no gear to help you out, aside from the armor on top of the hill, which really only helps you out against the zombies. So, not for nothing, but I actually had some personal experience to back up my hot takes on this particular game. I was uniquely positioned for this review, and curious to see what this place had to offer.
So the first thing I noticed when I entered this game is that I've got this big blue force field around me. I don't know why it needed it, I don't know what's wrong with the standard force field, but whatever.
Yes, the big blue force field. I got a bunch of comments about that one. Roblox updated the force field effect, and that was the first time I was seeing it. Everyone and their children's children pounced at the opportunity to fill me in. That, and something else. Watch this space.
The first disaster is giant zombie. What the fuck? Sweet humping Jesus, what the fuck is going on? Holy shit!
My reaction to the falling zombie head set the tone for the episode. A perpetual state of bemusement and not my fault syndrome. Some of it is warranted, like a ghost literally coming out of nowhere and killing me. Some of it is just rotten luck. Some of it is just me being bad at video games. Either way, you can't win them all. But I do question the purpose of a lot of that gear you can buy in terms of how any of it is supposed to help. I seem to remember a lot of disasters killing you in one hit, so healing items would be useless. Maybe there's some appeal to earning gear to make survival easier, but if you ask me, that kinda knocks the wind out of the survival aspect. I'm reminded a bit of NerdCube talking about Far Cry 3. As you get more gear and skills from your Tatao, the game very quickly goes from survival to Rambo. That's not necessarily a bad thing, but it may not have been what you were expecting or hoping for. Then again, survival to Rambo kinda sums up the overall arc of Far Cry 3 as you go from hunting down Vaz to becoming Vaz. I don't think the furry fox was trying to make any kind of major statement with Survive the Disasters. He was just trying to make a fun place, and the items were there to increase the fun by rewarding you for being a good survivor. With a little more variety in the disasters, maybe this could have been considered a sort of proto-Fall Guys or something. But, as I mentioned in the review, a lot of the disasters are laughably easy to avoid, a lot of them are carbon copies of each other, and some seem borderline impossible to deal with unless you know the trick. But when figuring out the trick boils down to 90s adventure game puzzle logic or very specific strategies that require very specific execution or else they won't work, that kills the fun for me. I prefer my problem solving to be intuitive, not banking on studying every pixel or every random point of reference like you're trying to line up a smoke grenade in CSGO. That's just me though.
Well, fuck you, you piece of shit, owner bot.
I feel like the gag with me arguing with the furry fox's automated reply system is the quintessential thing to point to when people think my reviews were always meant to be taken at 100% face value. That was my way of reassuring viewers, whatever shade I throw, I am here to make jokes. The last thing I wanted was for people to think I'm legitimately that bitter about every Roblox game under the sun. My general mood while playing games for these reviews amounts more to indifference than unadulterated rage that I portray for the show. At the end of the day, I'm putting on an act, exaggerating whatever negative feelings I may have toward a game, or else just finding the stupidest shit to throw a hissy fit over. The idea is to turn non-issues and minor nuisances into the most mind-bogglingly unforgiving shit you could ever hope to conceive. Let's face it, I knew the answer to the question of, can I be admin, before I even prompted the bot with it. I just wanted to know how it'd reply, and I don't know what I expected. Actually, that's not true. I knew it was going to reject me, and I knew it'd make a good moment to play up for the camera. A shining display of how petty this persona can be. Same thing with complaining about only 10 seconds between disasters. Obviously, it's not going to wait much longer because the furry fox didn't want to kill the flow by making the grace period too long. Although I do think 30 seconds is a little excessive for some of the disasters. As I showcase some of the disasters, we get the infamous plane crash. Boy, did I get comments about that one. Just run to the corner of the map, they say. Tutorials on how to survive the plane crash would pop up in the comments section for years to come. I just looked, and the latest instance I found by searching the word plane was as recent as 2 years ago. I'm not even joking. Let me clear the air on this one. No pun intended. First of all, I don't care. It's a comedy review for you to watch and laugh at, and I had no intention of ever going back in there after the review. Second, you really thought I was that invested? My real reaction was more along the lines of, well, this is stupid. I could just hide in the house for every disaster. Oh. Okay, then. Might have even made for a good Roblox random insanity skit. But that's how normal Zhao Zhao Man reacted. You came to the show to see how the raging Roblox reviewer would react. I know I'm still playing as Zhao Zhao Man in-game and all that, but like I said, I'm putting on a persona for the sake of the show. Angry Video Game Nerd is not representative of James Rolfe as a person. Bo Burnham on stage is not the same man as Bo Burnham in everyday life. Third, to entertain those who do care enough, you don't seem to get a whole lot of warning as to where to land or where the safest spot will be. Like I said, it doesn't strike me as the most intuitive disaster to survive. Not when it catches you by surprise and has a large area of effect that isn't telegraphed. That I could see. But again, that's all assuming I care, which I didn't, and still don't. Real Zhao Zhao Man just shrugged it off and kept recording, contemplating what kind of excessively angry rant I could go on over something as silly as giant, hard-to-avoid disasters. And if you think the idea of hiding up Jesus' holy asshole is obscene, be grateful I said holy and not hairy as I originally intended. I knew I was pushing boundaries as it was. And then we get to the mini-montage of my many failures. God, even now I can't help but smirk at this part, if for no other reason, because of how much fun it was to do. There was something incredibly amusing to me about pretending to be angry. Maybe it's because I had years of practice and it felt like a hell of an opportunity to use that energy for comedy purposes for once. Super Mario Frustration still retains its charm and directly or indirectly serves as another source of inspiration for my fits of rage in some episodes of the series. If you know what video I'm talking about, you're a grizzled YouTube veteran. Now, if only my ears or speakers or headset worked better back then when I did my tribute in the form of my I Wanna Be the Guy videos, because ending off with, here's a little speech for that incompetence, was a result of me mishearing, there is no excuse for that incompetence in the source material. Don't ask. Anyway, there were a couple occasions where I would just shout angrily into the microphone while recording for reviews, only to instantly flip back into full composure to reassure my parents that I was just putting on an act. One thing that clued them in was when they heard me shouting the same exact phrases in an attempt to get it to sound right and not trip over my own words. I swear, there are times when you can practically hear me trying not to grin or laugh as I'm shouting in fake anger. You should know, it is very easy for me to start suddenly shouting as if I'm angry about something when I'm just putting on an act, and I can switch back to my normal self in a split second just as easily. Sometimes, to spare my folks the trouble, I would just wait until I was home alone to record lines when I knew shouting would be involved. Then again, people have shouted more awkward things in more awkward circumstances.
Go ride a circus ride! What?
I draw the line right there. That is discrimination. That is unacceptable.
Yeah, drawing the line at the guest apocalypse because it was discriminatory. Guests were not especially well liked back when that was a thing. They were stuck with super safe chat by default, and for better or worse, couldn't see the normal chat, so they couldn't read the words of angry regular users expressing their frustration over the guest not knowing what they were doing, despite said guest having no ability to ask for help, let alone receive it. It was a strange feature in retrospect. Yeah, there we go again. Yeah, retrospect, yeah. Seriously, I didn't even plan it. If you're going to download the Roblox client to play the game, you might as well commit to an account while you're at it. I'm pretty sure most people felt the same way about, oh, for fuck's sake, of course I had to make a Moonbase Alpha meme here. Can you tell this was the early 2010s? I apologize. Anyway, it's important to remember that guests were still human, and they were trying to enjoy the game just like the rest of us, when exploiters weren't using them to torment players anonymously and consequence-free. Here's a fun fact for you. The Justin Bieber gag was meant to carry over into the episode's stinger. The original plan was to show the scene in Portal 2 where Wheatley's power trip begins and he just turned GLaDOS into a potato. I was gonna have Justin Bieber's face superimposed over potatoes as Wheatley shouted, "I am not a moron!" But I was still learning Vegas Pro and didn't know how to fix the resolution of the image so that his face wouldn't crop out as it got close to either side of the screen. I scrapped it and replaced it with the ending scene in the final video. Not only was it funnier and more in line with the video, but it also didn't date the video more than I already did with that stupid fucking Moonbase gag, just in case Roblox Random Insanity 4 wasn't bad enough about it. Oh well, live and learn. By now you may also notice I've become a lot more confident about speaking in a video, to the point of really playing up the character with a proper range of emotions. Back in my earlier videos I sounded almost reluctant to speak, but by now I've finally gained all the confidence I need to put on a proper performance. That would come in handy in the next video, almost 2 years later. Whoops.
I'm problematic. He's a problem.
Welcome, one and all to the land of the town of Robloxia.
First off, hats off to the people who recognize the Phantom toll booth as the source material for the intro of this video. I even found an illustration of the Weatherman to use for the occasion. My 8th grade English teacher would adore me for that. You can also hear my voice quality is significantly better because I found a better way to deal with the background noise issue. First, record a few seconds of dead air, then use Audacity's noise reduction feature to set it as a noise profile. Then, record the line like you normally do and apply noise reduction to it. And voila! Pretty basic stuff, but I was happy to figure out a better solution than Windows' overly aggressive noise suppression and figure it out on my own. It wasn't on par with how I sound these days because this was before I switched to the Samson Meteor microphone I use now, but it was a big step up. Now if only I could have learned better audio balance. The music is a little loud and almost drowns out my voice. Not as bad as super awesome Roblox fun facts for cool people, but still a bit problematic. The preamble ends with a nod to Green Day that I contemplated following up with swapping out the intro music for. That probably would not have been received well by viewers by virtue of breaking sacred tradition. At the end of my usual sequence, we get the last ever Patacaro title card. He called the snake Officer Snakey mainly because I still didn't have a name for my snake. I still haven't figured out what I want to name him, if you can believe that. I'm notoriously indecisive. You know, maybe I could have done a slightly better job blurring those usernames since they're still kinda legible, but it's been 10 years. I doubt anyone cares anymore anyway. Except Sonic, obviously. Like I said, acceptable target. I like that I didn't get a proper screen cap of Jared Valdez stealing his place because the jackass got banned before I had the opportunity. How on brand. I forget whether this was the last time he got banned, but I don't think anyone worth listening to really misses him. Can't say the same for One Dev 2 though. Poor guy. He was chill enough to uncopy lock his place so that everyone would have a chance to play it so that it wouldn't be lost to time or another ban that may or may not have been warranted. As someone who made his own archive of Roblox places public domain as part of his swan song, I respect that. The morning segment was directly inspired by a Zero Punctuation episode that started with a declaration of Yahtzee's condolences for Japan at a time when a tsunami had devastated part of the country. That declaration was immediately followed up with a disclaimer that it was meant to karmically balance out the first words out of his mouth. Man, Japanese people like weird things. I forget what review it was, but I can assure you that kind of thing is very on brand for Yahtzee. and I still have no reason to think he even knows I exist. I'm sure people figured this one out, but saying Robloxia at him was not me tripping up and rolling with it. That was me poking fun of the trademark symbol at the end of the title. I get a sneaking suspicion he didn't actually hold a trademark for Town of Robloxia. If he was legitimately trying to claim as much, maybe it's no wonder he got banned. I kinda remember someone claiming to be him on an alt contacting me on Roblox, but I don't remember getting any follow-up when I replied, and I don't remember what he had to say. I still think the idea of turning a peaceful roleplay map on its head and converting it into a deathmatch map is a funny idea. Maybe not the blatant anti-brony vision I had at the time, but... well, actually, that itself still sounds pretty hilarious, mainly for the ludicrous juxtaposition of it all. Either way, that little rant is proof positive that the video is, in some regard, a product of its time. I couldn't help myself but slip in some anti-brony propaganda because I was so sick and tired of seeing My Little Pony everywhere. It's still around, but seems to have been overshadowed by Bluey, Paw Patrol, and for some godforsaken reason, Peppa Pig. But mainly Bluey. Imagine like a kid's show in 2023. I See Your Bluey and Raise You Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends. The Model Series, Seasons 1 through 5. Mavis is keeping me company even as I write this. But My Little Pony's 15 minutes were over 15 minutes ago, and I'm not the unlucky tug, so let's move on. Once again, the reviewer being the reviewer complaining about the play button. It's probably there for scripting reasons or to make doubly sure you don't miss out on the intro cinematic he made. This game was ahead of its time. My editing, on the other hand, still had some catching up to do because resampling really came back to bite me in the ass in those freeze frames. At least I had 3 Clicks Phillips video to clue me in on that. Unfortunately, the only one to really notice and complain about it was future title card artist Daffy Titanic when I was making the Nimrod House 2 continuation, so it wouldn't be fixed for a while. Still, fun little gag with Mr. Nobody, complete with a terrible pun well worth of my favorite Fabio gif. I love that OneDev2 wrote choose your job instead of choose your role, because that gave me some great setup for this gag. I played a lot of Saints Row the Third at the time, so I saw a golden opportunity to throw that in. I do think Saints Row 2 is the better game, though. How the mighty have fallen. Also, not to get political, but I really wish that cops get away with anything joke didn't age as well as it did. Luckily, we have a convenient diversion to keep me off my political soapbox, roleplay mode. This is probably the first time the reviewer actually decided to give the game he's reviewing a sporting chance by embracing it for what it is, even if it is an over-the-top approach. The video suddenly shifts from Raging Roblox Reviewer episode to improv comedy. A few people in the comments successfully identified the music as Venture Bros music, but admittedly, I'm not entirely familiar with the source material. I heard the music in a video by TF2 Soldier Main Panda Poops called Pueo Wheel Quass, A Guide to Soldier in TF2. It was fitting for what I had in mind, so I used it for this video. NTSF SD SUV, on the other hand, is the show that I saw a few episodes of. I need to figure out where I can watch more episodes because I need more of it in my life. Believe it or not, turning the video into a big roleplay adventure was not what I originally had in mind. This was supposed to be a proper review, until I realized I had a much more fun and amusing idea. Besides, I was dealing with another Robloxville situation in some capacity of not knowing what to...
I checked to see if he was mad.
I've been totally awful. My closet is chock full of stuff that is vaguely shitty.
Oh dear. That didn't age well. That definitely would have gotten me cancelled on Twitter if I did a gag like that today. Someone would create an account for me just so they could cancel me. I shouldn't have to say, but I did not mean for that to be so prescient. But I'm getting uncomfortably close to my political soapbox again, so let's just move swiftly onward. Yahtzee's review of Fallout New Vegas was actually a pretty substantial inspiration for the roleplay mode gag. New Vegas was functionally more Fallout 3 as far as he was concerned, and he'd already played and reviewed Fallout 3. So he tried something different with New Vegas by embracing the roleplay aspect and telling the story of his hardcore mode journey through the post-nuclear Mojave. Yahtzee instigated a fight between the NCR and Great Khans over a hostage situation. I used a fire engine to block the road for legitimate police reasons. And anyone even remotely familiar with the Spanish will know that this subtitle is bogus. I was actually saying, I'm not wearing any pants, who knew? Followed by a dated TF2 meme asking for a stout shako. I get the feeling Too Refined wouldn't cover it anymore, though. Thanks, inflation.
Yeah, you better pull up your pants, you statue perv.
And come on, I know the statue was just doing that heroic hands-on-hips pose you see all the superheroes do, but I was not gonna pass up that opportunity. The beauty of this review is that I was still able to sneak in hints of what a by-the-book review would have covered. The reviewer would have had words about falling into the void, even though the map couldn't have realistically gone on forever. I was just curious to see what would happen if I kept going, whether there'd be an invisible wall, if the road was even real, or if it really did stretch on as long as it appeared. If only that one player knew what was happening while they were AFK. Little did they know they were on the business end of vehicular assault-flavored police brutality for the sake of a punchline. Then I finally dropped the act to give my closing thoughts as the reviewer. But you'd think it was just me talking, not the reviewer, because I'm being uncharacteristically diplomatic about it. Aside from saying idiots and online daters need to be buried in mass graves, that was just cold. Then again, it's more in line with the reviewer. But hey, the first game to get a verdict that isn't sucks ass. The first ever verdict of not sucks ass. Not an awful game, but not mind-blowing either. It was alright. It did what it set out to do, and did it well enough for me to have a hard time criticizing it, even in character. You can imply from the footage and commentary what I would have said, but there was nothing particularly outstanding aside from the usual just Roblox things. I mainly dock points due to the fact that most of the fun I was having was from pretending to be an overzealous and thoroughly corrupt cop abusing his power to hunt down a single criminal that I had no proof even existed. It was fun, but it was my imagination doing all the heavy lifting while the place provided the tools. Still, credit where it's due. This review was a lot of fun to do, and I still look back on it fondly. Mostly. That ending gag of me standing on a torch in one of the Roblox God of War sets is random as all hell. I don't even remember that, but I had to have been showing Yoshi Man around the set for the fun of it. And yeah, I still have contact with him. For what it's worth, I apologize for leaving you guys hanging on this review for 7.5 years.
And I'm really fucking sorry.
I don't know what's worse. The fact that the next video with Raging Roblox Reviewer in the title was an April Fool's joke after 2 years of waiting, or the fact that it wasn't even the end of the wait for a proper review and it took another 5 goddamn years for that to happen. I'm pretty sure people were happy to see an upload anyway, since I'd become increasingly inactive on YouTube by this point. The Fabric of Reality really was one of the most relaxing games on the platform. So simple, yet so calming. Right up there with Google Earth VR in terms of Zen vibes. In the video, I explained that I had recorded footage for the next review, which was work at a pizza place. And I did, but I ditched it because it had been outmoded by substantial updates to the game. I was ready to go in and record again, and either that never actually happened, or I ditched the footage yet again. I do remember having issues with my mouse at the time and accidentally buying something with Robux because of the mouse button double-clicking at a bad time. It happened when I was ordering takeout at a restaurant once as well, and we wound up calling each other at the same time. I called to get it set straight, and they were calling me to ask, "Did you mean to do that?" To my surprise, when I complained to Dude 1 about the purchase by misclick on Twitter, he offered assistance in reimbursing me. And he did. What a nice guy. I've since retired the Razer Death Adder mouse in favor of a Logitech G402, which started to have its own problems, and so Logitech offered to replace it with a G502, which I've been using ever since. I wasn't lying when I said the voice work was in progress, but that had to be scrapped as well because of the changes, not to mention the microphone update. I said I had a crew working with me, but I abandoned those plans as well. But how prescient of me to say as much, because I did get help with the next review. Just not in the way I thought I would. I'll tell you all about it in the next and final part. I'll see you then.